The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty post office, and Rebecca Porter stepped down onto the dirt road of Opal, Montana, clutching a worn carpet bag and a crumpled advertisement that promised steady employment and respectable lodging. The year was 1884, and the journey from Philadelphia had taken nearly 2 weeks of rattling trains and uncomfortable coaches. Rebecca's back ached, her traveling dress was covered in trail dust, and her stomach twisted with equal parts hunger and apprehension. At 22 years old, she had never been west of Pittsburgh until 3 days ago, and now she stood in a town that consisted of perhaps 20 buildings stretched along a single muddy street, with mountains looming in the distance like sleeping giants. "Miss Porter." A gravelly voice called from the wooden walkway. Rebecca turned to see a barrel-chested man in a vest and dusty trousers, his weathered face creased with what might have been a smile under his thick mustache. "Yes, I am Rebecca Porter. Name is Hutchins. I run the general store. Logan Graham sent word you would be arriving on today's stage. He is finishing up some business at the land office, but he asked me to make sure you got settled with some refreshment. My wife has coffee and biscuits if you would like." Rebecca felt a flutter of relief mixed with fresh nervousness. Logan Graham, her employer, the man whose advertisement she had answered 2 months ago. She had sent her references, he had sent travel funds and details, and now she was here to begin her duties as his housekeeper. The advertisement had been quite clear about the position. Respectable woman needed for household duties. Room and board provided, must be of good character and willing to work. She followed Mr. Hutchins into the general store where his wife, a pleasant woman with graying hair, fussed over her and provided strong coffee and warm biscuits with butter. Rebecca ate gratefully while Mrs. Hutchins chattered about the town, the weather, and the various families who lived in the area. "Mr. Graham has been alone out at his ranch for near about 6 months now," Mrs. Hutchins said, refilling Rebecca's coffee cup. "Ever since his last housekeeper, Mrs. Davenport, went to live with her daughter in Helena. He is a good man, works hard. His ranch is about 5 miles northeast of town. He runs cattle," Rebecca asked, trying to piece together what her new life might look like. "Cattle and horses both," Mr. Hutchins answered. "Started that place from nothing about 4 years back. Built the house himself, cleared the land, everything. He has done well for himself." The door opened with a jingle of bells, and Rebecca looked up to see a tall man step inside. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at his collar, and his eyes swept the room until they landed on her. Those eyes were a startling blue-gray, set in a face that was lean and sun-bronzed, with a strong jaw and a straight nose. He appeared to be in his late 20s, perhaps 28 or 29, and there was something in his bearing that suggested both strength and careful consideration. "Miss Porter," he said, and his voice was deep and steady. "I am Logan Graham. I hope the journey was not too difficult." Rebecca stood quickly, smoothing her skirts. "Mr. Graham, the journey was long but manageable, thank you." He stepped closer, and she noticed the way his clothes, though dusty from work, were well maintained. His boots were worn but oiled, his shirt clean beneath his leather vest. "I appreciate you coming all this way. I know it is quite a change from city life." "I am grateful for the opportunity," Rebecca said, which was true. After her father's death had left her alone and nearly penniless, positions had been scarce. Her stepmother had made it clear Rebecca was unwelcome, and prospects in Philadelphia had dwindled to nothing. This position, isolated though it might be, represented security. "If you are ready, I have the wagon outside. We can get you settled at the ranch before supper." Rebecca gathered her belongings. thanked the Hutchins couple, and followed Logan outside to where a sturdy wagon waited, hitched to 2 bay horses. He helped her onto the seat with a gentlemanly hand, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. As they rolled out of town, Rebecca studied the landscape. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the grassland, and wildflowers dotted the fields in patches of purple and yellow. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow despite it being early June. "The ranch is called the Lazy G," Logan said, breaking the silence. "I have about 400 head of cattle right now, and I am building up my horse herd. I have 2 hands who work the place, Miguel and his son Carlos. They have a cabin on the South 40. Good men, been with me since the beginning." Rebecca nodded, absorbing this information. "What will my duties entail, Mr. Graham?" He glanced at her, and she saw something flicker across his expression, something she could not quite identify. "Well, I suppose the cooking and cleaning, maintaining the household. But I should tell you, Miss Porter, that my expectations might be different from what you are accustomed to." Her stomach tightened. "Different how?" "I do not need someone to simply scrub floors and cook meals, though those things need doing," he said carefully. "I am building something here, and I need someone who can think, who can make decisions when I am out on the range." Mrs. Davenport was more of a partner in running things than just a servant. She kept the books, helped with the planning, even doctored the animals when needed. Rebecca felt a spark of something unexpected, a flicker of interest rather than the dread she had anticipated. "I see. My father ran a small mercantile before he died. I helped him with the accounts and ordering. I learned to manage things." Logan's expression brightened noticeably. "That is exactly the sort of experience that would be valuable. I am not looking for someone to simply take orders, Miss Porter. I am hoping for someone who can help build this place into something substantial." The words settled around her like a warm shawl, unexpected and comforting. Every other position she had inquired about had made it clear she would be little more than a servant, expected to be invisible and obedient. This man spoke of partnership, of contribution beyond simple domestic labor. They crested a small rise, and Logan pointed ahead. "There it is." The ranch house sat in a gentle valley, a solid timber structure with a wide porch and stone chimney. A barn and several outbuildings stood nearby, all well maintained. Fences marked off corrals where horses grazed, and she could see cattle dotting the hillsides beyond. It was modest but purposeful, everything speaking of careful planning and hard work. "It is lovely," Rebecca said honestly. Logan pulled the wagon up to the house and helped her down. "Come on, I will show you around." The interior of the house surprised her. She had expected rough bachelor quarters, but instead found a main room with handcrafted furniture, a large stone fireplace, and windows that let in generous light. The kitchen was well equipped with a good stove, work table, and organized shelving. A hallway led to 3 bedrooms and a small office. "Mrs. Davenport had the room at the end of the hall," Logan said. "It has its own window and is the warmest in winter. My room is across the hall, and the 3rd bedroom I use for storage, though we could convert it if needed." Rebecca set her carpetbag down in what would be her room. It was simple but comfortable, with a real bed, a wardrobe, a washstand, and a window that looked out toward the mountains. After the cramped boarding house room she had endured in Philadelphia, it felt like luxury. "I usually eat around 6, Logan said from the doorway. "But do not worry about cooking tonight. I had Miguel's wife, Elena, leave a pot of stew that just needs warming. You should rest from your journey." "I do not mind cooking," Rebecca protested. "That is what I am here for." Logan shook his head, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Miss Porter, you have been traveling for 2 weeks. One evening of rest will not collapse the household. Besides, I thought tomorrow we could discuss how you would like to arrange things, what schedule works best." There it was again, that unexpected consideration, that suggestion that her preferences mattered. Rebecca found herself off balance in the most peculiar way. That evening they ate the stew at the kitchen table, and Logan asked her about her journey, about Philadelphia, about her life before. She found herself talking more freely than she had expected, telling him about her father's store, about how she had loved helping customers and managing inventory, about how her father had taught her to read and cipher beyond what most girls learned. "My mother died when I was 8, she said. "After that, it was just my father and me until he remarried 3 years ago. His new wife never cared for me much. When he died last year, she made it clear I needed to find my own way." "I am sorry," Logan said quietly. "Losing a parent is hard. I lost both of mine to cholera when I was 19. That is part of why I came west. There was nothing holding me in Ohio anymore." They cleaned up the dishes together, and Rebecca noted that Logan did not simply leave the work to her but pitched in naturally, as if accustomed to doing for himself. When she mentioned it, he shrugged. "Been on my own for years. A man learns to cook and clean, or he lives in filth and starves. I do not expect you to wait on me hand and foot, Miss Porter. I just need help managing all the pieces of running this place." That night, lying in her new bed and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the Montana prairie, Rebecca thought about Logan Graham's words. She had come west expecting to be a servant, to spend her days in drudgery under the orders of a demanding employer. Instead, she found herself in a place where someone spoke of partnership and valued capability over mere obedience. It was unsettling and hopeful in equal measure. The next morning, Rebecca woke to the sound of roosters and the smell of coffee already brewing. She dressed quickly and went to the kitchen to find Logan frying eggs and bacon. "You are up early," he said. "I figured you might sleep late after traveling." "I am accustomed to rising early," Rebecca replied. "My father opened the store at 7 every morning." "Good, because ranch life starts with the dawn." He plated eggs and bacon for both of them. "After breakfast, I thought I could show you around the operation, introduce you to Miguel and Carlos, and we can talk about what needs doing." Over the next few hours, Logan gave Rebecca a comprehensive tour. She met Miguel, a weathered man in his 50s with kind eyes and a thick Mexican accent, and his son Carlos, a young man of perhaps 19 with his father's smile. Both greeted her respectfully, and Miguel's wife, Elena, who came by with fresh eggs, embraced her warmly. Logan showed her the barn where he kept his best horses, the chicken coops, the smokehouse, the root cellar, and the workshop where he did repairs. He explained his breeding program for the horses, his plans to expand the cattle herd, his hopes of eventually selling quality stock to the army and to other ranchers. "The books are in the office," he said as they returned to the house. Mrs. Davenport kept everything organized, but I have been making a mess of it for the past 6 months. I can manage numbers well enough, but keeping track of all the details is not my strength. Rebecca looked through the ledgers that afternoon and found them thorough but, as Logan had said, neglected in recent months. Entries were sporadic, some expenses were not recorded, and the filing system had broken down. It would take work to bring everything current, but she could see the bones of a well-run operation underneath. "This is manageable," she told Logan over supper that evening, "but it will take me several days to get everything sorted and current." "Take whatever time you need," he said. "That is exactly the kind of thing I was hoping you could handle. When I am out moving cattle or breaking horses, I cannot be worrying about whether I recorded the grain purchase or filed the receipt for the lumber." As the days turned into weeks, Rebecca settled into a rhythm at the Lazy G. She woke early and prepared breakfast, then spent her mornings on household tasks and her afternoons in the office working on the accounts and records. Logan often ate lunch with her, and they fell into a pattern of discussing the ranch's needs and plans. What struck Rebecca most was how Logan listened to her ideas. When she suggested reorganizing the filing system, he immediately agreed. When she proposed buying in bulk from a supplier in Helena to save money, he asked her to work up the numbers and trusted her judgment. When she noticed that they were losing eggs to predators and suggested building better protection for the chicken coops, he and Carlos built a reinforced coop the next week. "You have a good head for business," Logan said one afternoon as they reviewed the monthly expenses together. "These reorganizations you have made are going to save us considerable money. My father always said that minding the small expenses was how you kept a business healthy," Rebecca replied, pleased by the compliment. Logan leaned back in his chair, studying her with those blue-gray eyes. "Miss Porter, I have to say, you have exceeded every expectation I had. This place runs smoother than it has in months." Rebecca felt warmth creep into her cheeks. "I am simply doing what you hired me to do." "No," Logan said firmly. "You are doing much more than that. You are thinking ahead, seeing problems before they become disasters, finding efficiencies I never would have noticed. That is not just following orders. That is real partnership." The word hung between them, and Rebecca felt something shift in her chest, a recognition that her feelings toward her employer had become more complicated than they should be. She had grown to look forward to their lunchtime conversations, to the way his face lit up when she showed him a new solution to a problem, to the rare smiles that transformed his serious features into something approaching handsome. It was dangerous territory, she knew. She was his employee, dependent on his goodwill for her security. She could not afford to develop feelings that might jeopardize her position, but as June melted into July, those feelings grew harder to ignore. One morning, a rider came from town with a message that a shipment of supplies had arrived at Hutchins' store. Logan asked Rebecca if she wanted to accompany him to pick up the order, and she eagerly agreed, grateful for a change of scenery. The ride to Opal was pleasant, with Logan pointing out landmarks and telling her stories about the area. When they reached the town, several people greeted Rebecca warmly, asking how she was settling in. Mrs. Hutchins insisted they stay for lunch, and over roast chicken and potatoes, the older woman peppered Rebecca with questions about the ranch. "It must be quite different from Philadelphia," Mrs. Hutchins said. "Do you miss city life?" Rebecca considered the question honestly. "I miss some things. The libraries, the variety of people, but I do not miss the crowding or the noise, and I certainly do not miss feeling useless." "Useless?" Mrs. Hutchins looked surprised. "In the city, there were so many people competing for so few positions. Here, my work matters. I can see the difference I make." Rebecca glanced at Logan, who was talking with Mr. Hutchins about cattle prices. "Mr. Graham values capability and contribution. It is refreshing to be seen as more than just a pair of hands." Mrs. Hutchins smiled knowingly. "Logan is a good man. Everyone in Opal respects him. He deals fairly, keeps his word, and works harder than just about anyone. The ladies in town had hoped he might take an interest in one of their daughters, but he never showed much inclination toward courting." Rebecca felt an unexpected pang at those words, a sharp little stab of something that felt suspiciously like jealousy. On the ride back to the ranch, with the wagon loaded with supplies, Logan was quieter than usual. Finally, as they neared the turn-off to the Lazy G, he spoke. "Miss Porter, I want to ask you something, and please know you can answer honestly without fear for your position. Rebecca's heart began to beat faster. "Of course, Mr. Graham. Are you happy here? I know ranch life is isolated and you are alone most days while I am out working. If you are finding it too lonely or too difficult, I would understand." Relief washed through her. "I am not unhappy, Mr. Graham. Quite the opposite. I feel more useful here than I ever did in Philadelphia." He nodded slowly, and she thought she saw tension ease from his shoulders. "I am glad. I was worried you might find it too rough, too far from civilization." "This may not be Philadelphia," Rebecca said, "but it feels more like a real life than anything I had back east. There I was just waiting, existing. Here I am building something." Logan turned to look at her fully, the reins loose in his hands. "That is exactly how I feel, like we are building something real together." The intensity in his gaze made Rebecca's breath catch, and for a moment the air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Then a hawk cried overhead, breaking the spell, and Logan turned his attention back to the horses. That evening, as Rebecca prepared supper, she could not stop thinking about that moment in the wagon, about the way Logan had looked at her, about the word together. She tried to focus on kneading biscuit dough, but her mind kept wandering to dangerous territory. She was falling in love with Logan Graham. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. Somewhere between discussions about ledgers and debates about horse breeding and shared cups of coffee in the morning, she had tumbled headlong into feelings that could ruin everything. He was her employer. He had hired her to manage his household, not to moon over him like some lovesick girl. If he suspected her feelings, it would make everything awkward, might even lead him to dismiss her. She needed this position, this security. She could not afford to let emotions compromise her situation. But oh, how her heart raced when he smiled at her. How she treasured their conversations, the way he respected her opinions, the way he treated her as an equal rather than a subordinate. How she found herself watching for his return each evening, listening for his footsteps on the porch. Rebecca forced herself to focus on the biscuits, cutting them with sharp, efficient movements. She would have to be more careful, guard her heart better, maintain proper professional distance. That resolution lasted approximately until Logan came in for supper and complimented her cooking with such genuine appreciation that she felt her defenses crumble like the flaky biscuits on their plates. In August, a late summer storm rolled through the valley, bringing heavy rain and lightning that spooked the horses. Rebecca was in the kitchen preparing preserves when she heard a commotion from the corrals. Through the window, she saw Logan and Carlos struggling with a panicked mare, her colt running frantically nearby. Without thinking, Rebecca ran outside into the driving rain. She had grown up around her father's delivery horses and understood something about handling frightened animals. She approached the colt carefully, speaking in low, soothing tones, and managed to calm him enough to lead him toward the barn. The mare, seeing her baby safe, settled enough for Logan to get a rope on her and guide her to shelter. Once all the horses were secured, Logan found Rebecca in the barn, soaked through and shivering. "You should get inside and into dry clothes," he said, but he was looking at her with something like wonder. That was brave, coming out in the storm like that. "The colt was frightened," Rebecca said through chattering teeth. "I could not just watch." Logan grabbed a blanket from the tack room and wrapped it around her shoulders, his hands lingering for just a moment. "You never stop surprising me. Most women would have stayed safe inside." "I am not most women," Rebecca replied, and then immediately worried she had sounded too forward. But Logan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. "No, you certainly are not." They stood there in the barn, rain drumming on the roof, the horses settling in their stalls, and Rebecca was acutely aware of how close Logan stood, how his hand still rested on the blanket at her shoulders, how easy it would be to lean forward just a few inches. "We should get you inside," Logan said, but he did not move. "Yes," Rebecca whispered, but she did not move either. For a breathless moment she thought he might kiss her. His eyes dropped to her lips, and she saw something intense flash across his features, want and restraint warring visibly. Then Carlos called from the doorway, saying something about checking the other buildings for damage, and the moment shattered. Logan stepped back, clearing his throat, and they walked separately through the rain back to the house. Rebecca changed into dry clothes and tried to calm her racing heart. What was she doing? This was madness, dangerous madness. She could not afford to act on these feelings, could not risk everything she had built here for the sake of a momentary attraction. But it was not momentary, she admitted to herself. It had been building for weeks, growing stronger every day, until she could hardly remember what it felt like not to care for Logan Graham. That night at supper, they were both overly polite, overly careful, maintaining a distance that felt forced and awkward. Rebecca went to bed early, claiming fatigue, and lay awake listening to Logan move through the house, wondering if he was as unsettled as she was. The next morning brought clear skies and a need to check the property for storm damage. Logan asked Rebecca to accompany him on the inspection, saying he wanted her to learn more about the land and livestock. They rode horses this time, Rebecca on a gentle mare named Daisy, and Logan on his big bay gelding, Duke. As they rode through the property, Logan pointed out property markers, water sources, and the different pastures where he rotated the cattle. Rebecca found herself fascinated by the intricacies of ranch management, the careful balance of land and animals and resources. "You really love this," she observed as Logan described his plans for improving a particular pasture. "I do," he admitted. "Back in Ohio, I worked in a factory. Every day was the same, making the same things, following the same orders. Out here, every day is different. I am building something that is mine, something that will last." "That is how I felt about my father's store," Rebecca said. "Every day brought different challenges, different customers. I loved the variety and the sense of purpose." Logan reined in Duke and turned to look at her. "Do you feel that sense of purpose here, Rebecca?" It was the first time he had used her given name, and the sound of it in his deep voice made her heart flutter. "I do, Logan." His expression softened at her use of his name. They had crossed some invisible line, moved from formal employer and employee to something else, something neither of them had quite named yet. "I am glad," he said quietly. "I want you to be happy here. I want you to feel like this is your home, not just a place of employment." "It is starting to feel that way," Rebecca admitted. "More than anywhere has felt like home in a long time." They continued their ride, but something had shifted between them, a new ease and intimacy that made conversation flow more naturally. Logan told her about his dreams for the ranch, about wanting to build a legacy, about hoping to create something that mattered. "I used to think I wanted to do it alone," he said as they paused to let the horses drink from a creek. "Prove to myself that I could. But having you here these past months has made me realize how much better it is to have a partner, someone to share the burdens and the victories." Rebecca's throat tightened. "I have felt the same way. Working together towards something we both believe in, it is fulfilling in a way I did not expect." Logan dismounted and helped her down from Daisy, his hands strong and steady at her waist. He did not immediately step away, and they stood close together, the horses drinking nearby, the creek bubbling over stones. "Rebecca, I need to be honest with you about something," Logan said, his voice rough. When I placed that advertisement, I was looking for a housekeeper, someone to cook and clean and keep things organized. But what I have found in you is so much more than that. You have become essential to this place, to me, in ways I never anticipated. Rebecca's breath came shallow. Logan, please let me finish, he said. I know this is improper. You came here as my employee, and I have no right to complicate that with personal feelings. But I cannot pretend anymore that what I feel for you is simply appreciation for a job well done. It is more than that. You are more than that to me. Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes, relief and joy and fear all tangled together. I was so afraid, she whispered. I thought I was the only one feeling this way. I thought if you knew, you would send me away. Logan reached up and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Send you away? Rebecca, you are the best thing that has happened to me since I came to Montana. You have taken this house and made it a home. You have taken my scattered plans and helped me turn them into something real. You have become my partner in every way that matters except one. What way is that? Rebecca asked, though her heart already knew the answer. The way where I get to hold you at night, where I get to call you mine, where we build this life together not as employer and employee but as husband and wife. The words hung in the air between them, momentous and terrifying and wonderful. Rebecca felt the world tilt and resettle into a new configuration where everything she had been afraid to hope for suddenly seemed possible. Are you asking me to marry you? She whispered. I am, Logan said, his hands gentle on her face. I am asking you to be my wife, my true partner in every sense. I am asking you to build this life with me, not because I am paying you to, but because you want to, because you feel what I feel. Rebecca let out a sound between a laugh and a sob. I do feel it. I have been falling in love with you for weeks, trying so hard to hide it, afraid of ruining everything. Logan's smile was brighter than the Montana sun. Then I have wasted weeks we could have been honest with each other. I have been in love with you since the day you reorganized my filing system and explained why it would save me hours of work. I looked at you standing there in the office, explaining efficiency systems with such passion, and I thought, this woman understands me in a way no one ever has. Rebecca laughed, the sound pure and joyful. You fell in love with me over filing systems. I fell in love with your mind, your capability, your spirit, Logan said. The filing systems were just the moment I realized it. He leaned down slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Rebecca rose on her toes to meet him halfway. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle and searching, a question and an answer all at once. Rebecca had been kissed before, awkward attempts from unsuitable suitors in Philadelphia, but nothing had prepared her for the rightness of kissing Logan, the way it felt like coming home and setting out on an adventure simultaneously. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Logan rested his forehead against hers. Is that a yes? Yes, Rebecca said, laughing and crying at the same time. Yes, I will marry you. I will be your wife and your partner and build this life with you. Logan swept her up in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing like children, the horses watching with patient interest. When he set her down, he kissed her again, longer and deeper, and Rebecca felt the last of her carefully constructed walls crumble completely. They rode back to the ranch house hand in hand, an awkward arrangement that required Logan to lead Daisy while Rebecca rode Duke, but neither of them wanted to break contact. When they arrived, Miguel and Carlos were repairing a section of fence near the barn. Logan called them over. I have an announcement, he said, his arm around Rebecca's waist. Miss Porter has agreed to become Mrs. Graham. We will be married as soon as arrangements can be made. Miguel's weathered face split into a wide grin. This is wonderful news. Alina will be so happy. She has been saying for weeks that you two were meant for each other." Carlos congratulated them both, and soon Alina arrived with fresh bread and insisted on hearing all the details. The genuine warmth and joy from Logan's small ranch family made Rebecca feel even more certain she had found where she belonged. That evening, Logan and Rebecca sat on the porch as the sun set, making plans. They would go to Opal the next day to speak with the minister and make arrangements for the wedding. Logan wanted to build an addition to the house, add a parlor and maybe another bedroom for the family they both hoped to have. Rebecca suggested improvements to the ranch operation, ideas she had been hesitant to mention when she was just an employee, but now felt free to share as a future equal partner. "I do not want a long engagement," Logan said, holding her hand as stars began to appear. "I have wasted enough time being too cautious about my feelings. If you are agreeable, I would like to marry you within the month." "I am very agreeable," Rebecca said, leaning against his shoulder. "I have no family to invite, no elaborate preparations needed. A simple ceremony with our friends here is all I want." "Then that is what we will have," Logan said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. The next few weeks passed in a blur of happy activity. They rode to Opal and spoke with Reverend Matthews, who agreed to perform the ceremony on the first Saturday in September. Mrs. Hutchins took Rebecca under her wing, helping her make a suitable dress from fabric they ordered from Helena. The women of Opal, thrilled to have a wedding to plan, organized a celebration dinner to follow the ceremony. Logan threw himself into improving the house with Miguel and Carlos's help. They built the new parlor, installed better windows in the bedrooms, and added a larger covered porch. Rebecca continued managing the household and accounts, but now with the freedom to make changes she thought would improve efficiency. She reorganized the kitchen, set up a proper root cellar system, and established a regular schedule for maintaining equipment and buildings. In the evenings, they sat together and talked about their future, their dreams, the life they would build. Logan told her about wanting children, a family to carry on the ranch legacy. Rebecca shared her hope to maybe open a small lending library in Opal someday, bringing books to this frontier community. They discussed everything from finances to faith to whether they would raise horses or cattle as their primary focus. What struck Rebecca most was how Logan genuinely valued her opinions. He did not simply humor her or pretend to listen. He engaged with her ideas, challenged them when he disagreed, incorporated them when they made sense. He treated her as a true equal, a partner in every decision. "My father was the only man who ever talked to me this way," Rebecca told him one evening. "Like my thoughts mattered, like I had something real to contribute." "Your thoughts do matter," Logan said firmly. "You are intelligent and capable, and I would be a fool not to listen to you. I want a wife who will tell me when I am wrong, who will push me to be better, who will build this ranch with me, not just support me building it." The night before their wedding, Rebecca stayed in town with the Hutchins family while Logan remained at the ranch. Mrs. Hutchins helped her prepare, talking about marriage and what to expect, offering motherly advice that made Rebecca miss her own mother with a sharp pang. "You are marrying a good man," Mrs. Hutchins said as she helped Rebecca pin up her hair. "Logan Graham is honest and hardworking, and more importantly, he looks at you like you hung the moon and stars. That is the kind of love that lasts." The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, one of those perfect early September days when Montana showed her best face. Rebecca dressed in her new gown, a simple but elegant cream-colored dress with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Mrs. Hutchins tucked wildflowers into her hair, and Alina gave her a beautiful shawl she had woven herself. The ceremony took place at the small church in Opal, with what seemed like the entire town in attendance. Rebecca walked down the short aisle alone, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers, her eyes locked on Logan, who stood at the front in his best suit, looking handsome and nervous and so full of love it made her breath catch. Reverend Matthews performed a simple but moving ceremony. When it came time for vows, Logan took both her hands and spoke clearly. "Rebecca, I vow to honor you as my equal partner in all things. I vow to listen to your counsel, to value your mind as much as your heart, to build our life together with respect and love. I promise to stand beside you, not above you, and to cherish the gift of your partnership every day of my life." Rebecca felt tears on her cheeks as she made her own vows. "Logan, I vow to be your true partner in building the life we both dream of. I promise to give you my honest thoughts, my best efforts, and my whole heart. I vow to stand beside you through whatever challenges come, to celebrate our victories together, and to love you with everything I am." When Reverend Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Logan kissed her with tender passion, and the small church erupted in applause and cheers. They emerged into the sunshine as Mr. and Mrs. Logan Graham, and Rebecca felt a joy so complete it seemed impossible to contain. The celebration that followed was warm and genuine. The townspeople had prepared a feast, and there was music and dancing. Logan proved to be a surprisingly good dancer, sweeping Rebecca around the floor while Miguel played guitar and Carlos sang. Elena cried happy tears and kept hugging Rebecca, welcoming her to the family. As the sun began to set, Logan and Rebecca said their goodbyes and rode back to the ranch in the wagon, now decorated with ribbons and wildflowers courtesy of the town children. They rode in comfortable silence, hands clasped, watching the familiar landscape pass by. When they reached the ranch house, Logan helped Rebecca down and then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. "I believe this is traditional," he said with a grin, carrying her over the threshold. Inside, the house glowed with lamplight. Miguel and Elena had been there earlier, leaving a fire in the hearth and a cold supper in the kitchen. But Rebecca barely noticed, too focused on the man who set her gently on her feet and looked at her with such tenderness. "Hello, wife," Logan said softly. "Hello, husband," Rebecca replied, and then they were kissing, all the restraint of the past weeks finally released, hands exploring, hearts racing. Their wedding night was sweet and passionate, a discovery of each other that was both new and somehow familiar, like everything with Logan felt. He was gentle and patient, making sure Rebecca felt cherished and safe, and when they finally lay together afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Rebecca felt a completeness she had never known existed. "I love you," Logan whispered against her hair. "I cannot believe you are really mine." "Ours," Rebecca corrected. "We belong to each other. Partners, remember," Logan chuckled. "Partners, I will never get tired of that word." Life as Mrs. Graham brought new joys and challenges. Rebecca settled fully into her role as co-manager of the ranch, and Logan made good on his promise to treat her as an equal partner. They made decisions together, planned improvements together, and worked side by side to build the Lazy G into something substantial. That fall, they purchased additional breeding stock, 20 heifers and a bull from a rancher near Helena. Rebecca negotiated the price, saving them nearly $200 through careful bargaining and bulk purchase agreements. Logan proudly told everyone who would listen about his wife's business acumen. Winter came early that year, bringing heavy snows in November. Rebecca and Logan settled into a cozy domesticity, spending long evenings by the fire, planning for spring, reading aloud to each other from the books Rebecca had ordered. They learned each other's rhythms and quirks, how Logan liked his coffee almost too hot to drink, how Rebecca tended to hum while she worked, how both of them thought best when walking. They also learned to navigate disagreements. Their first real argument came in January over whether to invest in a new breeding bull or save the money for expanding the horse herd. The discussion became heated, with both defending their positions passionately. "We need better bloodlines in the cattle if we want to compete at market," Logan insisted. "But the horses have better profit margins, and that bull will tie up capital we might need for emergencies," Rebecca countered. They went to bed angry, lying on opposite sides of the mattress in stiff silence. But in the middle of the night, Logan reached for Rebecca's hand. "I hate this," he said quietly. "I hate being at odds with you." "I hate it too," Rebecca admitted, "but I still think I am right about the horses." Logan chuckled. "And I still think the bull is the better investment, but maybe we do not have to choose. What if we buy a less expensive bull and a few more mares? Split the difference." Rebecca rolled toward him. "That could work. We would need to run the numbers carefully." "We will do it together tomorrow," Logan promised. "Partners find compromise, right?" "Right," Rebecca agreed. And they sealed the reconciliation with a kiss that led to more, the disagreement forgotten in renewed connection. By their first anniversary, the ranch was thriving. The cattle herd had grown to 600 head. The horse breeding program was producing quality stock that commanded good prices, and the account books showed healthy profits. Logan and Rebecca had developed such an efficient partnership that Miguel joked they could read each other's minds. But the greatest joy came in October when Rebecca confirmed what she had suspected for several weeks. She was with child, due in late spring. Logan's reaction when she told him was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time, then immediately became frantically protective. "You should not be lifting heavy things, or riding, or working too hard," he fretted. Rebecca laughed and cupped his face. "I am pregnant, not fragile." Women have been doing this since the beginning of time while still managing their lives. "But you are my wife," Logan said. "Carrying my child, I want to make sure you are safe." "And I will be," Rebecca assured him. "But I am not going to spend the next 7 months sitting idle. The ranch needs both of us working." They found a balance, with Logan taking on more of the physical tasks while Rebecca focused on the accounts and planning. Alina came by more often, helping with household tasks and offering advice gleaned from raising 4 children of her own. Mrs. Hutchins visited regularly, bringing baby clothes she had sewn and sharing wisdom about childbirth. The winter passed slowly but happily. Rebecca's belly grew round, and Logan took to talking to their unborn child every night, telling stories about the ranch and making promises about the life they would have. Rebecca found herself deeply moved by his tenderness, by the care he took with both her and their coming baby. In April, as the snow melted and the first wildflowers appeared, Rebecca felt the first labor pains. Alina and Mrs. Hutchins had both agreed to attend the birth, and Logan rode to town to fetch the doctor as a precaution. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Logan paced outside the bedroom like a caged animal, while Alina and Mrs. Hutchins coached Rebecca through each contraction. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, their son was born, healthy and squalling with impressive lungs. Logan was allowed in immediately, and Rebecca would never forget the look on his face as he held their baby for the first time, tears streaming down his cheeks. "He is perfect," Logan whispered. "You are perfect. I cannot believe we made this." They named him Thomas Lee Graham after Rebecca's father and Logan's grandfather. Thomas proved to be a demanding but delightful baby. keeping both his parents awake with his powerful cries but rewarding them with smiles and coos that made every sleepless night worthwhile. Rebecca discovered that balancing motherhood with her ranch responsibilities was challenging but manageable. She fashioned a sling that allowed her to carry Thomas while working in the office, and Logan proved to be a devoted father, taking the baby whenever Rebecca needed both hands free. Elena was a constant source of help, often watching Thomas when both Rebecca and Logan needed to focus on ranch tasks. As Thomas grew from a baby to a toddler, the ranch continued to prosper. Logan and Rebecca expanded their operation, buying additional land and increasing both cattle and horse herds. Rebecca's business acumen and Logan's ranching skills proved to be a formidable combination, and the Lazy G became known throughout Montana as one of the best-run operations in the territory. When Thomas was 3, Rebecca found herself pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and in February they welcomed a daughter they named Mary Ellen. She was a quieter baby than Thomas had been, content to watch the world with serious dark eyes that reminded Rebecca of Logan. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm of work and family. Thomas followed his father everywhere, learning about horses and cattle before he was old enough to properly ride. Mary Ellen proved to have her mother's organized mind, arranging her toys with careful precision even as a toddler. Logan and Rebecca still made all ranch decisions together, their partnership as strong as ever, perhaps stronger for having weathered the challenges of building a life from nothing. One evening when Thomas was 5 and Mary Ellen was 2, Rebecca stood on the porch watching Logan teach Thomas to rope a fence post. The scene was so perfect, so far from what she had imagined that day she had stepped off the stagecoach in Opal, that she felt tears prick her eyes. Logan noticed and walked over, leaving Thomas to practice. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong," Rebecca said. "Everything is so right it overwhelms me sometimes. When I answered your advertisement, I thought I was coming to be a servant, someone to take orders and keep house. And instead, you became my partner," Logan said, pulling her close. "The best decision I ever made was placing that advertisement. The best luck I ever had was you answering it." "I came here with nothing," Rebecca said. "No family, no prospects, no hope. You gave me everything." Logan shook his head. "We gave each other everything. I was alone, building this place but not really living. You made it a home, made it a life worth living. We built this together, Rebecca. Everything we have, we created as partners." Thomas called for his father to watch him successfully rope the post, and Mary Ellen toddled over demanding to be picked up. Logan scooped her up while Rebecca praised Thomas's roping skills, and they stood together as a family, watching the Montana sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. Years passed in that same rhythm of work and love and family. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Mary Ellen surprised everyone by showing a talent for numbers that surpassed even Rebecca's, taking over many of the accounting tasks by the time she was 15. 2 more children joined the family over the years. A son named Daniel when Thomas was 8, and another daughter, Catherine, when Mary Ellen was 9. The ranch grew with the family, expanding to over 2,000 acres and becoming one of the most respected operations in Montana. Logan's breeding program produced horses that were sought after throughout the West, and the cattle herd provided steady income. But more than financial success, the Lazy G became known as a place where husband and wife worked as true equals, where children were raised to value both book learning and practical skills, where neighbors could count on help when needed. Rebecca and Logan never lost the partnership that had formed the foundation of their relationship. They continued to make every major decision together, continued to value each other's opinions and insights. They weathered droughts and harsh winters, market downturns and equipment failures, always facing challenges as a team. On their 20th anniversary, Logan surprised Rebecca by taking her back to the spot where he had first proposed, the creek where they had stopped during that ride through the property. They left the children with Miguel and Alina and spent the afternoon there, talking about the life they had built. "You ever regret it?" Logan asked. "Giving up the possibility of city life culture, all the things you could have had back east?" Rebecca looked at her husband, his hair now touched with silver at the temples, his face weathered by sun and wind but still so dear to her. "I never gave up anything. I gained everything. A true partner, a family, a purpose. What more could anyone want?" Logan pulled her close and kissed her, and it still felt the way it had that first time in the barn during the storm, like coming home and setting out on an adventure simultaneously. They returned to the ranch house to find all 4 children had worked with Alina to prepare a celebration dinner. The table was laden with Rebecca's favorite foods, and the house was decorated with wildflowers. After dinner, the children presented their parents with gifts they had made. Thomas had carved a beautiful set of bookends. Mary Ellen had created a detailed ledger system for the horse breeding program. Daniel had drawn a portrait of the family, and Catherine had written a poem about the ranch. Rebecca held Catherine's poem and felt tears stream down her cheeks as she read about home and family and love. This life, so far from what she had imagined when she had fled Philadelphia in desperation, had become more than she ever dreamed possible. As the children cleaned up dinner and Rebecca and Logan retreated to the porch, they sat in the chairs they had occupied thousands of evenings before, watching the stars emerge over the Montana mountains. "I have been thinking about the future," Logan said, holding Rebecca's hand. "Thomas will take over the ranch eventually. He has the passion for it and the skill." "He does," Rebecca agreed. "He is so much like you. But Mary Ellen has business sense that could take her anywhere. I think we should send her to college if she wants to go. She could study business, come back and help modernize operations here, or make her own way in the world." Rebecca squeezed his hand. "You continue to surprise me, even after 20 years. Most men would not consider higher education for a daughter." "Most men are fools," Logan said. "Mary Ellen has a gift, and we should nurture it just as we nurture Thomas's ranching skills or Daniel's artistic talent or Catherine's love of words. All our children deserve the chance to become everything they can be." "This is why I love you," Rebecca said softly. "You see people for who they are, what they can become. You saw that in me before I saw it in myself." Logan turned to her, his blue-gray eyes still as intense as they had been that first day in Hutchins' store. "You were always remarkable, Rebecca. I just gave you space to show it." They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the sounds of their children inside, the horses in the corrals, the wind through the grass. This life they had built together, starting from a simple advertisement and a desperate journey west, had become something beautiful and lasting. 25 years after Rebecca Porter had stepped off that stagecoach in Opal, Montana, she stood in the same town square with her husband, watching their eldest son marry a young woman from a neighboring ranch. Thomas, now 24, beamed at his bride with the same love Logan had shown Rebecca at their own wedding. The family had gathered for the celebration. Mary Ellen, who had indeed gone to college in Chicago and returned with a business degree and modern ideas for expanding their operation. Daniel, who was studying art in San Francisco but had come home for his brother's wedding. And Catherine, now 16 and helping run a lending library Rebecca had finally established in Opal 3 years prior. Miguel and Alina were there too, both elderly now but still part of the Lazy G family. Carlos had married and started his own small ranch nearby, and his children played with the younger Graham kids. As Rebecca watched Thomas dance with his new wife, Logan appeared at her side. "Thinking about our wedding, thinking about everything," Rebecca admitted. "How much has changed, how much has stayed the same." "Some things never change," Logan said, taking her hand. "I still love you more every day. I still think of you as my partner in everything. I still cannot believe my luck that you answered that advertisement." Rebecca leaned against her husband's shoulder, feeling the solidity of him, the absolute rightness of being by his side. "It was not luck. It was fate. We were meant to find each other to build this life together." "Partners," Logan said, the word still carrying all the weight and meaning it had carried 30 years before. "Partners," Rebecca agreed, and they watched their children and grandchildren celebrate, surrounded by the community they had helped build, in the town that had become their home. The Lazy G Ranch continued to thrive under Thomas's management, with Mary Ellen's business innovations helping them weather the changing economy of the late 19th century. Daniel's artwork, which often featured Montana landscapes and ranch life, became sought after by collectors back east. Catherine eventually took over the lending library and expanded it into a proper community center. Logan and Rebecca gradually stepped back from the daily operations of the ranch, though they never fully retired. Logan continued to consult on horse breeding, his eye for quality stock never diminishing. Rebecca kept her hand in the accounts, teaching her grandchildren the importance of good record keeping and financial planning. On their 40th anniversary, the entire extended family gathered at the ranch for a celebration that lasted 3 days. Children, grandchildren, and even the first great-grandchildren filled the house and grounds. Stories were told about the early days, about building the ranch from nothing, about the love that had sustained them through every challenge. Thomas stood to toast his parents. "My father always said he did not need a servant, he needed a partner. He found that in my mother, and together they built something that will last for generations. They showed all of us what real partnership looks like, what it means to truly value and respect your spouse." To Logan and Rebecca Graham, the best partners and parents anyone could ask for. Rebecca, now in her 60s with silver hair but still sharp-eyed and quick-witted, held Logan's hand and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. The scared young woman who had fled Philadelphia with nothing but a carpetbag and a desperate hope had found everything she never knew she needed in a Montana rancher who valued her mind as much as her heart. As the celebration continued around them, Logan leaned close to Rebecca and whispered, "Still glad you answered that advertisement." Rebecca turned to her husband, her partner of 40 years, and smiled. "Every single day for 40 years, and every day for the rest of my life." They kissed, to the cheers and applause of their family. Two people who had started as employer and employee but had become something far greater. True partners who had built a life, a family, and a legacy together. The sun set over the Montana mountains, casting golden light across the Lazy G Ranch, across the house that love built, across the family that partnership created. And in that light, Logan and Rebecca Graham stood together, still hand in hand after 40 years, still partners in every way that mattered, living proof that the best foundations are built not on servitude but on mutual respect, shared dreams, and abiding love. Years later, when Logan passed away peacefully at the age of 82, with Rebecca holding his hand and all their children surrounding them, his last words were, "Best partners anyone could ever be." Rebecca, heartbroken but grateful for their 54 years together, held him close and whispered back, best partners forever. Rebecca lived another 5 years after Logan's death, staying active in the ranch operations and her community work until the very end. When she passed away at 77, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, she was buried next to Logan on a hillside overlooking the ranch they had built together. The Lazy G Ranch remained in the Graham family for generations. Each successive owner taught the values Logan and Rebecca had established: hard work, fair dealing, and the importance of true partnership. The story of how Rebecca Porter had come west expecting to be a servant, but found instead a partner, a love, and a life became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. And on summer evenings, when the Montana sun painted the sky in shades of gold and orange, family members would sometimes swear they could see two figures standing hand in hand on that hillside, still partners, still in love, still watching over the life they had built together from nothing but hope, hard work, and the radical belief that marriage should be a true partnership of equals.